Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward. You give us the sources, articles, research, maybe your own notes, and we really dig in to pull out the core insights fast. We want to give you that shortcut to being genuinely informed, without getting buried in all the data. So today we're doing a deep dive into something fundamental: how change actually starts, specifically how you encounter reality, and crucially, why that encounter shapes everything that follows. Is it pain? Or is it progress? We're looking at a framework here that outlines, well, three really distinct ways we meet the world around us. Reality's the constant, sure, but the way you collide with it or maybe cooperate with it, that changes the whole game. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and I think what's key to get right away is that these aren't just like neat little boxes, these three scenarios. They really map onto a kind of path. A path of, let's say, emotional maturity and just sheer effectiveness. The sources show this pretty clear progression. You move from often resistance, maybe some costly mistakes in judgment, then through a kind of necessary humility towards, ideally, this conscious, productive cooperation with what is. Really, the whole journey is about shifting from avoiding things, which is heavy work, to finding alignment, which feels lighter, clearer.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. It sounds like maybe the roughest. Crashing into reality. Scenario one. This is where the pain comes directly from your own choices, right? Or maybe what you didn't choose to see or do.
Exactly. It's often avoidable. That's the kicker. The root cause here isn't usually bad luck. It's more like motivated reasoning
Yeah.
or just plain denial. You're using a flawed map because deep down you want reality to be different than it is. And the sources are clear. This isn't just about, stubbing your toe. It goes deeper.
Right. It's not just literally walking into a glass door because you were texting, although that happens.
Yeah, that too. But it's more the psychological version. It's believing you can do the impossible against all evidence, or maybe
Mm.
driving while impaired, thinking it won't happen to me.
Or like the example you mentioned earlier, the business owner just sinking good money after bad because they can't admit the initial idea isn't working, ignoring the numbers.
Exactly. Or staying in a situation, a relationship maybe, where the red flags are waving, but looking away feels safer in the moment than facing the truth of, say, being alone or starting over. That crash, well, it's the moment reality just corrects you forcefully. It's the project deadline imploding because nobody wanted to admit the tech wasn't ready. It's the financial hit from ignoring warnings about debt. The outcome is painful, often embarrassing, even humiliating because it exposes the self-deception. This scenario basically teaches you, the hard way, that reality has rules. Consequences stick no matter how good your intentions were. It draws a very hard line between what you assumed and what's actually fact.
Okay, so that's crashing through your own denial. But what about when things happen that are genuinely not your fault? That sounds like scenario two. Reality imposes itself. External forces, stuff you just couldn't control.
That's right. These are the kinds of events that, well, they don't really care about your plans or how careful you've been. They just happen. Think about a sudden illness, maybe a serious diagnosis out of the blue, or an accident you couldn't have prevented, a natural disaster. Even big economic downturns that gut an industry you thought was stable.
Yeah, things that can just completely change your life overnight.
Precisely. And these moments, they often feel incredibly unfair, don't they? Because you could have done everything right, saved money, had insurance, made sensible plans, and bam, something external just hits you.
It really forces you to confront the limits of your own control. It's humbling.
Deeply humbling. And what's fascinating here, the sources suggest the first, most crucial response isn't anger or fighting it necessarily, but humility, a profound acceptance of what has happened. The real challenge is accepting that some things just are outside your control, that life isn't always fair. But, and this is really important, acceptance here isn't the same as giving up. It's not surrender.
Okay, that's a critical distinction because acceptance can sound passive, like you're just supposed to roll over when something terrible happens. How do you accept without collapsing?
It's about where you put your energy. Acceptance, in this sense, is the active step of acknowledging the unchangeable fact of the event. You stop wasting precious mental and emotional resources fighting what already is. Instead, all that energy, you redirect it. You channel it into your response, into figuring out, okay, now what? Your strength isn't shown by preventing the hit. Sometimes you can't. It's shown in how you adapt, how you move forward from it. You acknowledge the limits, yes, but you fully own the power of your response within those limits.
Right, shifting energy from fighting the inevitable to crafting the response. That makes sense. But you mentioned a third stage, sort of the goal state. If scenario two is about acknowledging limits after being hit, scenario three sounds more proactive, participating in reality.
Exactly. This is moving beyond just reacting, whether it's to your own mistakes or external shocks, and stepping into anticipation. It's about choosing to align to work with reality. The sources frame it almost like an invitation, cooperate with the way things are.
Okay, cooperate with reality. What does that actually look like? It sounds a bit zen. How does that apply in, say, a tough negotiation or when planning a major life change?
Well, it's an active state. Very aware. It means really paying attention, recognizing the patterns playing out around you in the market, in your team dynamics, in your own health patterns, whatever it is, instead of pushing against those currents.
You look for a way to use them.
Yes, you look for the path of least resistance through them, or maybe even how to harness their energy. Think about those analogies the sources use: the eagle, using air currents it can't see but it understands.
Or the surfer on the wave. They don't control the ocean, but they understand its movement.
Precisely. Neither controls the fundamental forces, but they move with grace and efficiency because they've learned the patterns. They leverage the system's power instead of fighting it.
So, in business, active alignment isn't sticking rigidly to plan A when the market's clearly shifted to plan C.
It's seeing the shift early, maybe even anticipating it, and adjusting course, using the momentum of the change itself.
You got it. You're not trying to force a static solution onto a dynamic situation. You're flowing with it strategically.
And if we zoom out, connecting this to the bigger picture, this kind of participation must be where real resilience comes from. Constantly fighting reality sounds exhausting. It is exhausting. That's a key point. When you learn to participate, uncertainty stops feeling like this constant looming threat. It just becomes part of the landscape, the background condition of living. This actually allows for more calm when things get turbulent, because you expect turbulence sometimes. It's not a catastrophe. It's just the weather changing. You build genuine flexibility because you've already accepted that things are fluid, and your approach needs to be too. It saves you from that deep burnout that comes from trying to control the uncontrollable.
Okay, this progression from crashing to being struck towards cooperating it clearly has huge implications for how we feel, our internal state. The sources connect this directly to emotional health, right?
Yeah.
Referencing M. Scott Peck.
Yes, and this might be the most profound connection in the whole framework. Peck's insight helps us contrast two fundamental states. First, there's what he might call emotional sickness. This is defined by the drive to avoid reality, pretty much at any cost. Think about the sheer energy required to maintain denial, to keep up illusions, to constantly hide uncomfortable facts from yourself or others. It's exhausting.
Right. You're fighting on two fronts, dealing with the actual problem and then managing the whole apparatus of denial around it. That sounds like a recipe for anxiety.
Exactly. It breeds anxiety, cognitive dissonance. It kind of fragments you internally. You're living a contradiction. Now, contrast that with emotional health. Peck argues this demands facing reality, again, at any cost. It takes courage, no doubt, because the truth can sting in the short term. But facing it brings immediate benefits: clarity, a sense of stability, maybe even purpose.
Yeah.
Because all that energy you were spending on denial.
It's freed up to actually deal with things constructively, to participate.
Precisely. That energy becomes available for problem solving, for learning, for adapting.
So if we ground these scenarios back in everyday life, crashing is like sticking to a failing project plan long after everyone knows it's doomed. Being struck is when, I don't know, a key client suddenly pulls out and you have to react.
Right. Crisis mode.
But participation, that's more like anticipating potential client issues based on market trends, having contingency plans, maybe even shifting your focus before the crisis hits.
That's it, exactly. And making that shift from just reacting to proactively anticipating and adapting, that's not a one-time fix. It's ongoing work. It requires practice. The sources really emphasize the discipline involved. Things like regular reflection, paying attention to feedback even when it's critical, and being, frankly, ruthless about acknowledging your own mistakes. But maybe the toughest discipline is letting go of rigid expectations, letting go of the idea that you can or should control everything. Think about it. Frustration often comes from trying to control what's fundamentally uncontrollable.
And the flip side, stagnation, maybe comes from not focusing on the things you actually can influence or improve.
Perfect. The sweet spot, that state of participation, it lies right in that balanced beamwalk between putting in the effort where it counts and accepting what you genuinely cannot change.
It almost sounds like the first two scenarios, crashing and being struck, aren't failures so much as really expensive teachers pushing you towards that third way.
That's a great way to put it. They're powerful teachers. The crash teaches you reality is firm, doesn't bend to your wishes. Being struck teaches you humility, shows you where your real limits are. Both lessons, ideally, nudge you away from either helpless victimhood or stubborn resistance and towards a more conscious, mature way of engaging with life. Hashtag Haj Outro.
So it seems the choice is laid out for you, the listener. You can keep crashing, keep getting blindsided, or you can start learning to participate, to work with reality.
Yeah, participation means acknowledging our genuine human limits, but at the same time, fully embracing the power. We do have the power of conscious choice of how we respond. It flips the script, really. Reality isn't an adversary anymore. It becomes a complex system you can learn to navigate, even cooperate with. And ultimately, how you relate to reality. That relationship shapes not just your practical success, but your emotional well-being too.
So, the difference between feeling constantly disappointed and making steady progress. It might not be about your circumstances changing as much as your perception changing, your willingness to be honest. To live with that kind of emotional health, that groundedness, means building the habit of facing truth consistently, even when it's small. So here's something to think about. What's one small act of honesty, one tiny adjustment towards alignment that you could practice today to participate just a little bit better in your own reality? We'll leave you with that.